1, 2, 1, 2. One, two, 1, 2, 1, 2. How's everyone doing? You having a good time? Enjoying the food? No, I'm not going to eat. See, if I eat before I sing, sometimes I can burp into the microphone, and that's not really a good thing. I'm just kidding, but that sounds like in theory, right? So, but I hope you're all enjoying your food. It looks so, it smells so delicious. So thank you so much, Terry, for having me here. And thank you, ladies, for coming today. Thank you all. So originally I was going to do a presentation, and then I was going to do a song for you at the end. But I decided, you're still eating, so eat, converse, have fun, and do what dinner guests do, and I'm going to do a song for you now instead, okay? And this song is actually one you may have heard on the radio recently. It's by a pop star, and the song and the video that she put out was really, really cool, and I think it totally fits in with the theme of what Terry talks about every month. And it's definitely a song that fits with the theme today with finding power from within. And I loved all your responses. Those were so cool. I thought that was a great idea, Terry, to have everybody come and say what they thought. Even you weren't so sure at first, and then so. So this song is all about actually, Terry and I have been talking about maybe me I write theme songs for companies and for documentaries, and so it's not just for supporting domestic violence awareness, although that is mostly what my project's all about, and I'll tell you all about that, but also maybe having some kind of theme song for her website as well. But this song's pretty perfect. So it's about, we feel like we have to, especially as women, we have to please, everybody on the outside. We have to please them by what we wear. You're shaking your head, that's good. And, we don't have to try that hard. We really don't. And when we find that power from within, we find our voice, we find who we are, then we can wear what we know we really rock. And, we can go out there and be ourselves, and it doesn't matter what other people think. So this is a song by Colby Calais, and it's called Try. Can you hear my mic? See, I actually wanted to keep it down because of people. I think this will be all right. I'll turn it up just a little bit.
The waitress is going to wait until the song's over to come in, so if you're waiting on anything, she will be back.
Okay, well, this is fine. You're going to love these lyrics. Put your makeup on, get your nails done, curl your hair, run the extra mile, keep it slim so they like you. Do they like you? Get your sexy on, don't be shy girl, take it off, this is what you want, to belong, so they like you. Do they like you? Try. your shopping on, don't be shy, girl. Get your shopping on at the mall, max your credit cards. You don't have to choose, buy it all, so they like you. Do they like you? Wait a second, why should they care what they think of you? When you're by yourself, who you wrong? Do you like you? Do you like you? You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to give it all away. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. And you don't have to change a single thing. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. Oh no. You don't have to try so hard. You don't have to bend until you break. You just have to get up, get up, get up, get up. And you don't have to change a single thing. And you don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try, 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 try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. You don't have to try. We're gonna do this last verse, okay? Take your makeup off, let your hair down, take a breath, look into the mirror at yourself. Do you like you? 'Cause I like you. Thank you. Well, now you're all so quiet. Do you like that song? You think that fit everything that you talked about, Terry? Yeah.
Beautiful lyrics.
I agree. Oh, thank you so much.
Just hit the B.
Just hit the what?
Letter B.
The letter B. B for, I don't know. Okay. So I wanted to just do a little bit of another icebreaker here. Wanted to find out what, when Terry and I had arranged for this, we had asked everybody to wear pink or purple because the being Breast Cancer Awareness Month, wearing pink, and being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, wearing purple, of course. So I think that's pretty cool. So I just wanted to kind of find out from you, you know, if you did go ahead and wear pink or purple, what was the reason? You know, you don't have to get as personal. You don't have to get personal, but just, or if you chose to wear pink, Melinda, you chose to wear pink. Why did you choose to wear pink as opposed to purple?
Wait, honestly, I looked in my closet this morning. I have this memory. And I love purple, and I don't have that many purple.
Oh, okay.
My mother had my very best friend in college, had an abusive father, so.
Oh, okay. So it is a little personal for you then. Okay. You've had your dinner, so now it's dessert time. These are purple Hershey Kisses. They're dark chocolate. And you're welcome. So, does anybody else want to answer? Total accident. Well, if you did, what would you have chosen? Pink or purple?
I would have worn pink or purple.
Oh, that's cool.
My aunt died of breast cancer. My grandmother had it twice. Another aunt had it twice. All environmental.
Oh my goodness.
Then my other aunt was my husband. So I was killed by her husband.
Oh wow.
So probably more purple because you're aware that breast cancer exists.
Right.
More light.
Oh, that's an interesting perspective. Yeah, hopefully one's enough. Anybody else? You have a lot of pink on.
Was totally by accident. But, seriously, I didn't get the note where I was supposed to get purple.
Oh, okay.
My husband passed away from cancer.
Yeah. I think there's some purple that's the color for cancer too.
Thank you.
Welcome.
I lost a good friend to breast cancer when my son was 5, and I miss her every day. And I have a pink jacket. You can't see because I'm sitting on it. But I also have a sister who was married to an alcoholic husband who was verbally abusive and very mean, and he did some things to have her children say some awful things to her when she finally did ask for a divorce.
So you support both causes
Yes.
as well, both colors. That's excellent.
I didn't wear purple, missed the memo, a little busy. But my mother-in-law is a breast cancer survivor. But she never went and got it checked out, and by the time they found it, it was the size of a softball.
Goodness.
But she didn't die, luckily, so she's made it through that and made it through many other things. But it's funny because before you asked if everybody, raised their hands if somebody knew about someone who'd been in domestic violence, I completely forgotten about someone who keeps crossing my paths. It's every couple of years I run into her. I just ran into her actually about a month and a half ago near my house, and we had met years ago, and we kind of keep crossing. Well, this last time I saw her, she had been beaten so badly by her husband that she had broken ribs and almost left for to die. And so she's come back from that, and it's interesting that we're talking about this tonight because there's a reason I'm here, and there's a reason I've been seeing her again. So,
Welcome.
So I have my purple scarf on for domestic violence and my pink bracelet for breast cancer awareness. I don't own a lot of pinks, but I have all my breast cancer awareness bracelets. And I'm a volunteer at Safe Haven in Waterbury, which does work for victims of domestic violence, survivors of domestic violence. So both causes are near and dear to my heart.
Very cool. Everybody has a free download card that I handed out. There's a song that she wrote for Safe Haven, their theme song. It's called Out of the Shadows, and it's all about survivors coming out and moving on and thriving. Yeah. So we wrote that for one of their galas. So did anybody else want to go, or?
Colleen and I have purple in honor of our mom. She had a lifelong battle with domestic violence with several different people. And we were touched by it quite a bit.
It's awesome. Thank you so much for coming. Yeah. Okay, well that's great. Thank you so much for sharing that. And so it's funny. I'm like. Well, I guess it's my turn. I get to talk about why I chose my topic. And of course, October being the month for domestic violence awareness, breast cancer prevention and awareness. They're both very, very important. And they do, even though they each affect men, the most reported cases are with women with domestic violence as being the victims. And then and with men, well, if there were medical emergencies with men having breast cancer, for example, then I'm sure those would be reported, because in that case those would have to. It wouldn't be something that could be covered up as easily. But I did think that was important. In my case, I am a survivor of domestic violence. I've had friends that have survived breast cancer, and I'm very supportive of that cause as well. But in my case, having survived domestic violence, and I'll say severe mental, physical, emotional, child abuse, and then from an alcoholic parent, and then so when I grew up into my dating time, high school and college on, I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship. And so that's really the reason that when one of my relationships actually became physically abusive and I had sought out counseling, I had found out that through the counseling for domestic violence, the specific psychology of abuse and domestic violence, I had learned that I was in a pattern of having abusive relationships. Those didn't just pertain to my dating relationships, but because our dating relationships are or marriages are so important in our lives, they're very important relationships in our lives that oftentimes shape us. So I want to just show you my story quickly here in this little video. Are you ever going to put this on, Phil?
Clicker.
Is it ready to go with the clicker?
Do you want to do that?
Yeah. Well, this is the whole motto of my project is showing survivors, and not just survivors of domestic violence, but survivors of any kind of trauma or really anything that we've been through in our lives, that it is possible to thrive.
My name is Vanessa, and I'm a singer-songwriter. I created a musical project for survivors.
Can you all hear that okay?
Put the microphone up.
Yeah.
Healing and awareness. So, today, I'm sharing my voice wherever and whenever I can. It wasn't always like that.
That's better?
October 30th, 2001, I stopped singing. That day, domestic violence stole my voice. I was on a professional singing career. My partner was also a musician and we performed together. He was arrested when his emotional abuse toward me had become physical. I had been a victim of the emotional abuse for years. From that moment, I associated the music and singing with abuse, and it became too painful for me to continue singing. That's what domestic violence does. Domestic violence, abuse, it's like prison. It takes away your spirit and enjoyment and leaves your life in ruins. Fortunately for me, that evening of October 30th, 2001, I met a police officer who handed me a card to sing him. I set up an appointment and began the internal struggle to get my voice back. Today, I am singing again. In finding my voice, I found who I am. I have a wonderful husband, supportive family, and friends. I now teach songwriting workshops. I produce events for domestic violence awareness, and I write songs to help other survivors. And sometimes, I tell my story. I can only hope
Gonna make a difference. Okay. Just some slides showing thriving. That's an image of me. Okay. It's one of our music videos.
Is that video shareable?
What was that?
Is that video shareable?
The video that you just saw?
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah, it's on YouTube.
Sarah, could you put it in the link to it in our event from tonight? I'd love to watch it again.
Because that's still buzzing here. Okay, thank you. And so here we are back to our slides. Everybody give Dom a round of applause. He's helping us out today. And, it's Monday the 13th, not Friday the 13th, and I had left the house without the laptop, and it was just craziness. So, but you know what? I've learned, one of the things I'm learning to do with learning about thriving and learning how to thrive is to embrace imperfection. I think that's huge. So, so thank you for your patience. So let me just get to this here, keep going. Okay, so the definition of healing. What is healing? I actually looked this up, and it's very simple: to make whole, and sometimes to make whole again. And trauma is, when I say we're each survivors of something, you know, we've all been through some kind of trauma in our lives, whether it's been grief or loss or illness or abuse or addiction or just life. Right? I mean, we're overcomers. So, but it's all brought about through some kind of a trauma. And going by this definition, trauma is defined as either a medical injury or a deeply distressing or disturbing experience. So it's either physical or it's mental and emotional. And some say that mental and emotional scars, and raise your hands if you all agree with this, are much, much harder to ever cure. I saw those hands. They were about I saw them. So post-traumatic stress disorder is a mental health condition that's triggered by a terrifying event. So you've heard of flashbacks and anxiety, nightmares, and uncontrollable thoughts about the event. Many people who go through traumatic events have difficulty adjusting and coping for a while, but they actually don't have post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD. With time and good self-care, they usually get better, but the symptoms get worse or last for months or even years and interfere with your functioning. You may have post-traumatic stress disorder. And getting effective treatment is critical to reduce the symptoms and improve function. But healing, I like to say, and I don't know if anyone's ever heard this analogy before, but I hope when I tell you a quick story, it will make sense to you. Healing is like a pendulum. Just by me saying that, does that make sense yet? No? Okay. It's good if you, okay, you're shaking your head no. And you're the singer, so we've got to talk. And I know you said you were a singer earlier, so that's cool. But the reason I say healing is like a pendulum is because what does a pendulum do? It swings back and forth. Really far distances, right? And then eventually it swings and it starts to balance into the middle. And I can tell you that I've been on a 13-year journey of healing from the abuse that I've suffered in my life, post-traumatic stress disorder. And when I have a very healthy marriage today. I have a wonderful, healthy husband, and sometimes it's unbelievable to have to say that, you know, he'd never lay a hand on me, or he'd never lay a nasty word on me, you know. But this is the truth. And it's a breath of fresh air from all the terrible relationships that I've had in the past. But before I met him, I was dating a lot of other guys, and sometimes some of them, I'm sure they were perfectly nice guys, and I would kick them to the curb because I'd see something that seemed like a warning sign of possible abuse, or I remember that one time it was just as simple as I had received a phone call from this gentleman after we went on a date, and I didn't call him back for a couple of days because I was very, very busy, and he called me back, I think a day or the next day, or it was just a little too soon, and he even made reference in the message as to, you didn't call me back, and I just thought, oh, this sounds a little controlling. So, I mean, it could have been he was just a little bit anxious himself, or a little shy, or he just said the wrong thing on the voicemail. But the point there was that I took it as a sign that it was just no good. So, and then another situation is after I had figured out what happened in my abusive relationships with men, I had still experienced some abuse through women. Whether it was coworkers being bullied, or it was there was even actually an organization started that we both wanted to speak out about emotional abuse, and the organization was to let the world know about emotional abuse. And because she had been very wounded and I had been very wounded, and we each were in different stages in our healing, it was a matter of time before I realized that she was also abusing everybody in the organization. So, and I just felt that was so ironic, but it's not. And one of the songs I do have is We Are the Walking Wounded, which is the analogy of soldiers. We all march forward, but no one gets left behind. But it really talks about the fact that while we're healing, hurt people. And that's very often what happens. So I talked a little bit about learning to trust again and finding balance, that pendulum, right? And then there's also unlearning and relearning. It's one thing to learn something, and once you learn it, but then, like growing up in an abusive childhood, and then having to unlearn that, the patterns and habits that you've learned, and then to relearn is probably more difficult than learning in the first place. So healing is a choice. What happens to us does not define us, and simply what happened to us, that's all. It's an incident that we've had to overcome and has changed us in the process. I really do believe that what happens to us is just something that has happened to us. If we've survived cancer, it's something that happened to us, and then it's our choice to go on to healing. And if we've survived being in an abusive relationship, it's we couldn't control that this happened to us. And this is important with a lot of the shame and blame that happens with victims and with survivors even. And I know I myself have used to have a hard time with standing up and saying, yes, I survived, because I felt that might open me up to, oh, she's been abused before, so she's an easy target. And maybe that did happen sometimes, but we do celebrate cancer survivors, don't we? I mean, we have these wonderful Susan G. Komen walks, and we have, someone says, I'm 5 years in remission, and what do? We all applaud, and I think that's so great. So I'd like to see it happen with abuse survivors. I mean, it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's not the victim's fault if they've been abused. It's not the victim's fault if they've had cancer, if they've had an addiction. I mean, sure, there's the choice to continue using the substance, and but there's also the choice to stop it. I found this quote. I thought it was very interesting. I don't remember the book that I had read it in, but I did still want to share it with you. It might have been through a life coach that I follow. But healing can happen on many different levels. Sometimes our healing is not what we expect. We need to be open to the gifts which life is all ready to give us. And it may be that a physical problem heals, but it may also stay a while to teach us. It's a long quote. Sometimes a health challenge is a doorway to a deeper healing, a cry from deep within for attention, to some part of us that has been unloved and feels separated from the whole. And there is hope. Have you all heard of the 5 stages of grief? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. This is a big part in talking about healing, because there's, well, you know the stages: denial, and then there's the different symptoms of denial: avoidance, confusion, shock, fear, anger, frustration, irritation, anxiety, depression. This is where we're really in our low. Overwhelmed, helplessness. I can't read what that says.
Hostility.
Oh, good job. Hostility and fight, or flight. And bargaining, acceptance. So this is a big part of the pendulum as well, is going through, the stages of grief. And I wanted to, before I talk about the different ways to heal, and I do say it's a choice. I say a lot that we have our choices. We can't control what happened to us in life, but we can choose how we respond to it. And that's a beautiful thing. Choices are a beautiful thing. Choices that are made during and after healing. So some choices, let me go back. So some choices, what are some ways that you feel that we can heal?
Therapy.
Therapy? Okay.
Talking, voicing your feelings, really.
Okay.
Forgiveness.
Oh, forgiveness, okay. But forgiveness is not mandatory, right? Or do you think it is? Have you've practiced forgiveness? I take it, who said that? I'm sorry. Oh, you did, Judy, okay.
I mean, if you hold on to the hurt and don't forgive the person, you might not get past it.
Yeah, I agree with that. And forgiveness is for yourself, though, right? It's not for the other person. It's for yourself. What are some other ways? Support groups? Okay. Yeah.
Learning to trust yourself. That's really where the wall of moving past, knowing that if it happens again, that you can move through it and past it. But if you don't trust yourself, then you don't trust anyone else. And really, that whole forgiveness and trust goes back to a mirroring back to you. And what you need to work on still that has been taken from you.
Yeah. Show of hands who agrees with this. One of the things I found in my own recovery, my own healing, there is a difference, I'll explain those, but we do use the terms interchangeably, recovery versus healing. But one of the things that I have discovered in my own recovery is that it hurts when someone doesn't trust us the same way that it hurts when we can't trust someone else. Have you all found that before? Do you know what I'm talking about there? Any examples? Yeah. So I thought that was really interesting because, and that's like what you were saying. Yeah. So some of the choices that we have are to self-care, the emotions that we feel, and they are just emotions. They pass like waves. We can act and stay still. Even when we're not making a decision, we are still, in fact, making a decision, even if we're staying in the same place for a while. You know, people that come to support groups and have been going to the same support group for years and are just comfortable with the people in the room, and they're comfortable talking about their problems over and over again, but they don't seem to be getting anywhere. So I have my crisis certification in counseling as well, so I've worked with domestic violence victims one-on-one, and I've run support groups, and I've also worked with them one-on-one. And that's one of the things we did find is that has anybody ever done any volunteer counseling or no? Okay. is that it can be a very thankless job, because sometimes victims get, they get stuck in a certain place in their healing. They find a plateau somewhere.
Well, sometimes because the pendulum keeps going back and forth, it seems like you're not getting anywhere. But then you learn years later what a difference you made. So you never know, just that smile, just that ear, even if you've heard it 100 times, might be just what they needed and not what you need them to do. They have to find their way out.
Sure. Thank you. Respond to, to what's happening to you, or what has happened to you, or the post-traumatic stress disorder. Reach out for help, be assertive, or to focus on the problem, or to ignore it, to live in denial. When you do find your voice, what do? We explore it, we embrace it, we welcome it, we celebrate it, we have gratitude for it, and we share it. Oh, the one thing that I didn't hear anybody mention about, types of therapy or self-therapy is music. How many of us believe that music can be very healing? All of us. Okay, great. I think I saw just about every hand. So that's one of the things that I do with my project, with the Purple Song Project. It's something that came out of music. I'll just tell you a little bit more about my story. I've been a singer since I was 5 years old. I was on a professional singing career path. I was on my way with a vocal scholarship to a great school. And I had met someone in my college who sang and played guitar and played at the local coffee houses and the bars. And I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And I said, one day I was feeling particularly confident, and I walked up to him and said, would you ever like a duo partner? And he said, yeah, let's try it out. So we went into a practice room after school, after classes one day, and we tried out a song. It was a song that I had never heard before. And he was actually a big fan of any of the folk singers, John Denver, James Taylor. And this was Peter, Paul, and Mary Leaving on a Jet Plane. I had never heard it before, though, except for maybe once, in the womb when my parents had it on the radio, perhaps. And I just started opening up when he was singing it and harmonizing, and it just sounded so good. And so we decided to go out. And then later we were dating, and so we were this working acoustic duo, and then we were dating, and then the relationship turned abusive, because remember I told you already that I was in this pattern of having abusive relationships. So, and then this one happened to become physically abusive. So when 4 years later, when I had left the situation, he was arrested and given a restraining order, and for attacking me one night at my college. And I had learned to associate the singing and the music with abuse. And so it became too painful for me to continue singing. So eventually I did find my voice. And because music had been both a blessing and a curse in my life, when I did find my voice, it took many, many years. It took other workshops. It took a lot of other therapy. It took all the kinds of therapy that you mentioned, journaling and writing songs. And so the Purple Song Project was started so that I could write songs for survivors, and I could talk about, what happens in abusive situations. But the tagline being, it is possible to thrive, is so that when victims of anything become survivors, there's that place where they can very easily, I mentioned healing can reach plateaus sometimes, can slip back and become, how would you say, another plateau. Or they can even slip back into being victims again. So, or suffering post-traumatic stress or whatever comes with being a victim. so that if we can teach them to become thrivers, then that means that they'd be that much further away from being just survivors, so to speak, and so celebrating what they've been through. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. So when you find your voice, you find who you are, and we know what we want, what does and doesn't serve us. We are on our way to becoming whole again, and nothing can affect us. We learn to love ourselves, and that's a good thing. So music has positive physical effects. It can produce direct biological changes, such as reducing heart rate, blood pressure, and cortisol, stress levels. Studies suggest that exposure to prosocial lyrics increases positive thought, empathy, and helping behavior. And then there's that connection that comes out of hearing the music, hearing the song that I did for you earlier, with going along with what Terry teaches, with helping women to feel more confident on the inside, and then being able to know what they can wear on the outside and feel confident. And so even just the feel of music. Have you heard that when you're going through a breakup, it's good to listen to music that's about breakups? I guess country music is good for that, they say. And if you're going through whatever you're recovering from, it's good to listen to something that really speaks to you through its lyrics or through its tone or through its melody. So that's one of my plans with the Purple Song Project. So thank you for letting me share that. And we are coming out with a CD. I have a producer now, and we are working towards our first CD. You're actually the first group that I'm telling this to, but due out this time next year. So, yeah. Thank you. Okay, well, I did have a raffle. I had some journals to raffle off. I had, how convenient, a purple journal and a pink journal. So if we can just pick a number from 1 through 20. That's a good range, right? Okay, and so what number am I thinking? Okay, go ahead, you can call it out.
4, 18, 8, 5, 4, 3, 11, 1,
Haven't heard it yet.
6, 2, 19, 4, 11, 1, 16, 2.
When do you stop this? When all the numbers are taken up?
Until somebody gets it right.
8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, I can't do that. Okay.
18.
I heard a 15. You said 15, didn't you? I thought I heard you say 15. Oh, are you throwing your voice or something? Or are you able to do that?
Maybe that's what's happening today.
Would you like the pink journal or the purple one?
I'll take the pink.
Okay.
Thank you.
And this is a moleskin journal, which is very nice. That's the purple one. Okay. So here's another number. I'll go from 20 to 40 now.
38, 27,
33.
25, 37, 22,
40.
42, 21, 31,
40.
29,
39, you said? You're welcome. What was that? Oh, yeah, right? Yes. That's a lucky chair. Yes.
When you have people that, hear people in domestic violence or, being depressed or dealing with something, and people are like, well, why can't they just, get happy? What's wrong? How do you respond to that?
Well, that's kind of like saying, oh, this person has depression. Why can't he or she just snap out of it?
Yeah.
So, so what was your question specifically? Why can that?
There's somebody in my life that has a tendency to react that way to people that are, if they're depressed or whatever. Well, why can't they just be happy? Why can't they just snap out of it? And I never know what to say back to them.
Oh, okay.
And
So I'm looking for some guidance.
Well, do you know if that person says it directly to that person?
No.
That's suffering, whatever?
It's our conversation.
Okay, so it's their frustration, really.
Yeah.
So you're asking me what I would say to that person?
Yeah.
What we should say? I could slap a book in their face and say, here's some education. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. But
It's like a lack of empathy for, what somebody else is
Yeah.
going through.
yeah,
So how do you help somebody to understand that you need to be empathetic to what they're dealing with?
I have I could say something.
do you have, yeah, go ahead.
I think depression isn't very well understood by people who've never experienced it. And people who do experience know it can be just as debilitating as a physical ailment that someone can't control. So I think, like you said, it's very hard to hear someone say that about someone else, but they're not aware that it can be as
Debilitating.
Yeah.
So maybe there's an answer on this.
It's almost like if you're hearing that person say, why can't they just snap out of it? It's almost like you have to understand they may not even know what that's about. And that's why they're so frustrated. But then you can always say to them, well, if you were in that situation, how would you want someone treating you? Wouldn't you like some empathy? Wouldn't you like some time if you were in that particular situation? Yeah, kind of everybody has to put each other in each other's shoes.
Someone in their shoes.
Yeah.
And view it from the other person's perspective.
You could try with that person and see if they change their tune.
The other person too is coming from a very low point of view of themselves. So, doing what you said, being in their shoes, but also not seeing it from how they see themselves in the mirror. If you felt horrible about yourself and someone would continue to tell you horrible things, that's going to continue to erode. And the assumption too is that the person who has been abused or bullied or whatever started at a low point, and that may not be the case. I'm pretty much out there in regards to my feelings, my voice. I got into trouble all growing up for having too much of a voice. But sometimes we can think that we're strong and it couldn't happen to us, that we are in control of it, but it happens just the same. And a little bit at a time, it's stolen away. And I can speak from experience.
We were talking about being in an abusive situation.
So she may think, I would never allow someone to do that, but it doesn't start out that people are mean to you or they're bad to you. There's that perfection thing that we look for that, you were saying it's good to remember that perfection is not healthy nor achievable. But in an abusive situation, usually there is perfection there. A lot of times it's too good to be true. So it doesn't start out that they start abusing. It's over time they start to treat you that way. But in the beginning, it's all wonderful. So you start excusing it away, and it seeps in slowly.
I have an example that goes along with that. When I was talking about that emotional abuse organization that we had started up, this person, the best way I can describe when I realized that this was not going to work out, it was basically like being under a spell with this person, because everything about her seemed so perfect. She was attractive. She had just she knew what to say in these situations. She knew how to network. And she knew how to run this organization, and she was very controlling. But sometimes we can get into situations with controlling people because we love that they are, we like to, especially women, we like to have our guy choose where to take us for dinner and, suggestions on what to order or whatever the case may be. So we like that other person to be in control. And so that's what I had. But it was, the best way to describe it is really just, it was like a veil had come off of this person, and all of a sudden I saw them in natural light. Whereas all this time I'd been seeing them like sparkles around them. So, yeah. All right, you're welcome.
I also do have information that I got from Safe Future. They sent me.
Oh, from Safe Futures?
Yes,
Oh,
that I
great.
can
Okay.
pass out. So if you know of someone who's experiencing something and you don't know what to say, I remember my abuser's sister had handed me a card and said, if you ever need help, here's the number. She knew, she was with it. So.
too, when people lack empathy about it, it's because they're shielding themselves in some way from dealing with the reality of what they're seeing, you know, or like they don't want to go there because going there would open themselves up to having to examine things about themselves or experiences that they have, you know, and it, like maybe they're in denial about certain things, or sometimes just they haven't learned about it. And I like to equate mental illness issues with something like diabetes. You know, that you wouldn't tell a diabetic, just get over it. They have to take their medication. There's treatment that they have to go through in order to maintain their health. And people who have experienced the other emotional issues, it's a similar kind of process. They just can't fix it. And sometimes equating it to something physical makes it more understandable. That's a good one.
It's like when the situation happened with Robin Williams, you know, how all these blogs came out about and everything about people were not understanding depression. And they were thinking that they could just snap out of it, or, you know, not realizing that it was actually a crying out of the person who was depressed. And it was, I forgot what they said about him exactly, Robin Williams specifically.
There was a very good blog that came out about how he didn't die from committing suicide. He died from depression, the same way that a cancer survivor or a cancer, somebody who's suffering from cancer succumbs to the illness. You know, there was stuff going on that he couldn't see a way to live. So he was doing what his illness was dictating for him to do. It's not always a matter of choice for people.
That's what they were saying. So he didn't make the choice. He just,
You know,
Just got to a place where he couldn't deal with it anymore.
yeah. Well, good luck with talking to your friend. I hope that you know, you can actually, the pamphlet that Terry's passing out should have some good information, you know, what to say to an abuse survivor. But yeah, I hope that they find more empathy of what's going on, you know.
Some of you have donated clothing to help my clients. I also donate to Survivor for Thriver, which is how Vanessa and I had met through a woman who started the organization through one of my networking groups. But also it is another place with recycling bras. A lot of you may know and some of you may not. A friend of mine had left an abusive relationship, marriage with 3 kids. She left in the middle of the night, but before she went to bed, she put her bra on because she has arthritis so bad, rheumatoid arthritis, that she didn't know she'd have time to put it on, so she went to bed with it on. And so when I learned about a woman who takes in bras to be recycled, to be made into other things, or given to shelters if they're like new or new condition, I thought it was perfect match to the story that I had heard, to realize how important it was to leave with your bra. You know, and a lot of women don't have that opportunity to leave with a bra. They just leave as they are, or, you know, the cops come, take what you put in. You're just, you know, kind of leaving with nothing. So, you know, some of those basics of, again, caring for yourself and what your needs are, you know, they seem really basic to us, but, you know, some are starting from scratch.
Some of the centers also accept sweatpants and sweatsuits
Yeah, they usually
because
have a
they're
list
for
of things too that
yeah.
they will take in. But any of the clothes that I don't use for teaching, for selling to help promote the free things that I'm doing for women, I donate to women who have been through abuse.
Do they pick up items or at the house or do you have that?
Well,
Oh,
for
do you have
me, what I do is I take the clothing directly from
Oh,
people.
okay.
So when you may at some point in time see someone hand me over a bag of clothes or a bag of quietly tied bras that are handed to me in the middle of the networking meeting, at dinner. I got some in the mail with my birthday present from out of state. I'm like, oh yeah, 2 bras before I get my gift. She told me she was shoving
Well,
right in. Yeah.
That's like giving a donation if you have an organization. That's
That's
like
right.
someone giving
No,
an
it was
organization.
all good. Wonderful stuff. Yeah. Are you done?
Yeah, I'm done. Yeah.
At the end, I always take a photo. Unfortunately, my camera, I didn't realize the battery